It is Halloween, aka the best month for tabletop RPGs. From spooky games to fun quirky games, there are so many different kinds of RPGs we can run. But one thing that I know everyone has questions about is how to build tension and fear in your tabletop RPG. So today I'm going to be talking about how I build tension and fear in my tabletop RPG games, whether it's D&D 5e, Genesis, or any other RPG. So, fear in a tabletop RPG is not the same as fear in a video game or a movie. Horror gimmicks like jump scares or extremely unsettling visual imagery are not going to be felt the same way as a TTRPG. Rather, fear, horror, and tension are an extension to feelings of real or imagined threats. Whether that be a killer is chasing you, or a cosmic horror that is beyond your comprehension is inevitably going to destroy you, are both equal feelings of fear. It is that feeling of helplessness, dread, and discomfort that is built through setting, tone, characters, and increased stakes. So, for video games and movies, the visual imagery as well as jump scares might be indications of fear or, well, exaggerated fear, but you can't do that exact same thing in a TTRPG. So, how do we do that? Well, first, we have to establish what kind of game we're playing and whether or not your players and the GM want to have a horror-inducing game. Because not everyone wants to play a high-stakes thriller-induced horror game. You have to clear that with your players first and foremost, and with yourself. Do you have the ability to play or run a horror-themed / thriller-themed game? These games can be a lot of emotional labor and even triggering if you don't talk about the things you do want in your game and you don't. So definitely discuss upfront on what you want in the game and what you don't. Also, understand that horror, fear, and suspense will differ depending on the mechanics. If you're playing D&D 5e, horror is going to look vastly different than say Call of Cthulhu, or vastly different than if you're playing GURPS. They're all different games, so be sure to cater the mechanics and cater the horror to the game in question. So great, we have an understanding of what fear, horror, and thriller might look in a tabletop RPG versus say other mediums. We also understand that you've talked to your players and or GM about the kind of game you want to play. Well, let's start up with the 4 things that I use: music, setting, stakes, and personal motivation. Starting off with music. For instance, the best enhancement is music and ambience. These 2 things can set the scenario and tone of your RPG. For instance, you and your players are stuck on an abandoned starship. You are cut off from all forms of communication, and it's your task to get off this starship as quickly as possible. So, GMs, you can have the sound of space in the distance. You can have the sound of metal creaking in the ship. You can even have the sound of animals like rats, vermin, or mice scurrying throughout the walls. These sounds could even be hint to potential plot points or encounters. For instance, if there are sounds of rats scurrying in the walls, why not allow the players to investigate that? Maybe they find a hint, such as there's a dead body in the wall, or maybe they find someone scurrying through the walls. Whatever have you, use music to your advantage when necessary. But let me warn you on this. Music is an enhancement as much as sound effects are, so be sure that they don't distract from the main game, because I know some players get easily distracted, and you don't want them to be off in Netherland not knowing what they're doing. So definitely confront your players and ask them, is it okay if I play music while we're playing the game? After using music, you should also build clues. Clues are helpful and provide your PC with certain information, especially if it's a mystery or espionage related encounter. Give your PCs all the information they need and that's it. Have them find the clues using their own skills. For instance, one player character is a technician who's really skilled in mechanics. Give them a key, task, / encounter that leads into booting up some old robot or finding information only a mechanic will understand. Make these clues personal, and if the clue relates to the character's past, experiences, fears, or tribulations, have them investigate further into that. Give them disadvantage if they're facing off against a fear that's related to this clue, and maybe reward them with advantage for investigating a clue that they're good at. Have these clues build on top of one another in relation to the big bad or the next social, puzzle, or combat encounter. For example, if players see a bloody footprint as they enter into the cave, maybe have that foot in another room. What if that foot is in the middle of an empty room and all you see is that foot and a puddle of blood? What do you as players and as the GM do? That is clues building on top of one another. Definitely try to include that in your next game. With a certain amount of clues, I also think creating stakes and dire situations is super imperative. What is your player character risking going in there? What do they have to gain and what do they have to lose from encountering something beyond their imagination? A horrifying or tense situation is only as intense when there's investment into it. Have NPCs that the players care about get hurt, harmed, or even killed. Hint at clear danger and make it known the players' lives are in danger, and continuously increase the stakes as the game goes on. It also helps to give players an ultimatum on what to do when the situation gets extremely scary and worrisome. For example, players are chasing down the ghoul that has been hunting innocents for months now, but as they run through this hallway, they hear children screaming down one corridor, and in another corridor they hear elderly people screaming another. But they know that the ghoul went forward. What do the players do? Do the players go after the ghoul, or do they go after the other two screams? For you as a GM, you can provide so many different situations, and it's up to the players to determine what they want to do. And it also helps when these stakes are personal. Maybe the enemy impersonates a family member or a PC's loved one, or abducts a PC's loved one. What this does is bring the character's personal experiences in, and ultimately make the PC invest more. Finally, it also helps when you separate characters or make them feel weak. Stakes are as important or as strong when your characters feel like they're not able to accurately and effectively take down a hassle or a task. So it definitely helps when you create situations or encounters where characters feel helpless or have limited chance of winning without finding particularly clever situations around an encounter. And finally, personal motivation. Personal motivation is what drives your character to do the thing they do. And in horror situations, your characters are facing up situations that they might have never seen before, they're not equipped to handle, or they're too scared to handle. So it's important for players to know what is their personal motivation and why they're doing what they do. By knowing this, you can build encounters, build monsters, create situations, create clues that lead into their character motivations. When you do all of this, I think you can create an awesome horror situation where your characters are both continuously filled with dread while also enjoying the game experience. Horror is not easy, like any other genre. I think it's an awesome way to create awesome characters and awesome scenarios if done right. And as your average everyday queer host would like to say, you should get even more scared with my great review of Monster Hearts 2, a scary teenage horror drama tabletop RPG. I have a video right here, so definitely give it a check out if you're looking for something even more spooky.